Good afternoon. Today I'm talking to Brian O'Gorman. Good afternoon, Brian. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, well, my name is Brian O'Gorman. I live in Stockport, which is in Greater Manchester. Um, I have been a writer for about 6 years now. Um, the whole writing experience came about through a bizarre set of circumstances that all came together at the same time. I went through a messy divorce. I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I got put on medication for that, which it was weird because like before I got put on the medication, I had no concentration at all. I couldn't sit still and do anything. I'd always have to pace about or fiddle with something. Or, you know. I got put on this medication, and about 6 weeks into it, I was stood outside of the house that I was living in, and I was having a fag outside the back door, and I realised how incredibly quiet it was outside. And for a few moments, I was just standing there going, "Why is it so quiet?" And then I realised that it was quiet inside my head rather than outside. So I'd suddenly gained these powers of extra concentration. And the first thing I did, and you've got to remember, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something daft like that. And my mum had lent me um, three DVDs, the Twilight films, because I'd never seen them. And I went inside and I put one of these films on and just sat and watched it because I wasn't like twitching or irritable or wanting to move around. So I watched all three discs, and I didn't finish until like dinner time the next day. And not long after that, I met an old school friend of mine, and we went out for a pint of soda water, like you do. And she was talking to me about, you should try this internet dating thing. You're divorced, you're a free man, try this internet dating thing. And I thought, maybe I will. And so I did. I spent the next day setting up a profile, taking goofy selfies of myself and setting up this profile, and paid me 25 quid, robbing bastards. And uh, I got a match straight away. And the person who I got matched to, we've been married for 10 years now. So, so that worked out. But my wife has some physical disabilities. She has like fibromyalgia and arthritis and stuff like that. And she had a couple of falls. So we came to a consensus that I would give up working and stay home and take care of her. So uh, I did that, and then I found that once I'd given up work and I was at home a lot, I had a lot of time on my hands. And I used to write short stories just for fun, just to pass the time. I used to do it. I was quite good at it when I was at school. When I was at primary school, I was very, very good at English, or comprehension, as they called it back then, back in the old days, when they still had half pennies. And um, so I'd always sort of experimented with story writing. So I thought one day I was at a loose end, and I thought, I would try writing a short story, just seeing if I can tap into this. And because I have these new powers of concentration, I was able to sit and write a short story, and it wasn't particularly good, but it was enough for me to. I printed it out and showed it to my wife. I said, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And she read it, and she said, "This is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. You should do some more of this." And I was like, "Okay." So I got into the habit of every morning sitting at my computer and just typing away and seeing what came out. And after about 2, 3 months of this, I had a 60,000 word novella. And I discovered not long after that, I was looking into like, well, what do I do with this now? I've printed the whole thing out as a manuscript like that. It's, like you do when you're young and naive, you don't know what you're doing. I printed the whole bloody thing out, used up all the printer ink, and which I got yelled at for. And I was just like, well, what do I do with this? So I did some research and I discovered Kindle Direct Publishing. And I thought, oh, this could be fun. So all you have to do is format it, create your own cover. It's like, oh, so I'm going to have to learn some more skills here. So it took me a while, but I managed to get a book out. It was called Pharmacon, which was a story about a serial killer, funnily enough. It didn't do very well. It sold 7 copies, which was like my family and friends all bought one each, and they were like, hey, well done, good for you. And it's like, but I'd got into this habit of writing then, and so I started writing another story. And I'd seen this article on the internet about a giant spider that had been found in Manchester. I was like, oh, really? And I saw the picture of it, and it was this massive big spider stuck up in the corner of this room. And it was a big, horrendous looking thing. Anyway, the story turned out to be fake. There's actually a picture of a giant huntsman spider from New Zealand. But it was like, what if this was in Manchester? This would be really cool. So I started writing a story about it. And it turned into a story called Dawn of the Spiders. And I put it out there. Again, it died a death. And I didn't think anything else of it. And then I was stuck for an idea to write something new. So I thought, I'll look at Dawn of the Spiders again. And then ended up writing another draft, which took another 6 months, and re-releasing it. And after a couple of weeks, I got up one morning and it had sold a huge amount of copies in America, which was like massive, big surprise. I was like, wow, this is cool. And it kept selling and selling and selling for about 13 months. And it just kept going. It was like a rolling snowball. It just kept gathering and gathering. And so it was from that point on, I was like, well, I'm a writer now. This is what I'm going to do. So that's how I ended up where I am now, which is still in my living room. But
Did you struggle to concentrate to read a lot?
I didn't when I was younger. When I was younger, I could read quite substantial amounts of text. I used to love reading. I was a big Roald Dahl fan, and there was another author as well. I think she was called Jean Kemp, who wrote some quite gritty children's stories set in this particular school. There was like 3 books in this series, and I just loved them. I was just obsessed with them. And then I got into reading Roald Dahl, and from then, my mum was a big reader as well. She was a Stephen King fan. So you'd always see her lay on the floor because she had a bad back. So she would always lay on the floor with a book up like that, reading. The amount of time she fell asleep and dropped it on her face, it's just, you know. So as I got older, when I was about sort of 13, 14, she just read Pet Sematary, and she knew I liked reading, so she just handed me this copy of Pet Sematary and said, have a go at this. And okay. So I went up to bed and I read it all night because I was so drawn into this new and gritty world of horror writing. It was wonderful. So my concentration for reading was very, very good when I was young. It's sort of as I approached my late 20s and early 30s that I couldn't sustain the concentration because the mental health problem was getting worse and worse and worse, and the relapses were getting longer and stronger as time went on. So it just came up to like a crisis point, and then once I'd started on the medication, the concentration started coming back. So I was able to read books again. It was like, thank you, God, thank you. I can read again. So I started catching up with all the books that I hadn't been able to read during that period. It was a trying time. Let's put it that way.
You said you enjoyed English at school and writing stories. So did you think then you'd become an author one day?
I hadn't really thought about it because this was back in sort of the early 1980s, and it was like you never saw writers. You never saw the person behind the words in a book. It just didn't really occur to me. It was only sort of later on when with the advent of things like YouTube and all that I saw this documentary about Stephen King that I'd never seen before. It's called Master of the Macabre, and it was a film crew just spending time in his house and in his little office, and he had this huge word processor. I think it was called a Wang or something like that. It had a really silly name. There's this massive word processor that you just sat and he was hammering away with a fag hanging out of his mouth, And I saw that, and it's like, that looks like a hell of a good way to make a living, But it wasn't until sort of a bit later down the line when I actually found that I was able to write enough to make novels that I even considered it as a career. And the thing that happened with Dawn of the Spiders just took me completely by surprise. I just thought it was going to be a side hobby, but it's now become the main focus of my life. It's funny the way things turn out like that. But yeah, I'd never considered it until I'd seen that documentary.
And when you were able to read again, what did you read? What were your go-to?
Well, Stephen King, obviously. Love James Herbert. I think that The Fog is one of his finest books. It's so twisted. It's wonderful. It's just, things like that only come out of certain imaginations. It's just a fantastic story. There's another one called Portent as well of his, which I particularly liked. I started reading some trashy stuff as well, like Night of the Crabs by Guy N. Smith, which is it's just a kind of it's kind of like a B movie but in book form, And he wrote a lot of these sort of crazy, trashy monster books, and that influence sort of does carry over in some of the stuff I've written, the sort of B movie type thing, which is it's always been a massive appeal because I love cheap and nasty horror films. Those old rubbish ones. There's a brilliant one called The Giant Spider Invasion, which I think it's the only film that actually delivers on its title, because they actually constructed a huge giant spider crap. It looked like a great big 20-foot turd with pipe cleaners stuck in it. But they actually delivered a giant spider, and it was like, I love that kind of thing. I could sit and watch that all day and night. So sometimes I would read trashy books as well. I read some of the classics as well, like 1984 and Animal Farm and things like that. I got into H.G. Wells as well. I love The Time Machine. I think that's that's one I reread I've reread a couple of times, because that idea of the futuristic civilization with the Eloys who just so blissed out that they just don't care about anything. It's like yeah, that's kind of what humans would be like if we were given the opportunity. So that's the kind of thing. I read quite a broad spectrum of horror and sort of sci-fi stuff. But then I've picked up a copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, which I haven't read yet, and I keep putting it off. And I'm thinking I need to read that book because it's a classic.
Yeah, I've got that on my TBR as well. Yeah. I've never read it either.
No, I haven't.
Last year I decided I was going to tackle War and Peace.
Oh, why?
I don't know. Honestly, to anyone.
Why would you do that to yourself?
What was I thinking? It took me a month. I didn't even enjoy it particularly. It was all right, but oh my God. Just to say that I have, I guess. I don't know.
listen, at least you can say you read it, but it's not somewhere I'd go. I don't think. If it's not got monsters in it, I ain't interested.
Yeah, just no. Never. I would never recommend it to anyone. It's horrendous. Just the names more than anything. They're all
Yeah.
bloody consonants. They're all Z's and J's and things and K's and
Jikabluba, how are you?
yeah. So you just sort of make in your head. You make a noise like yeah. That's the name. Yeah. Could be anything.
I think I'll steer clear of that one.
Yeah, that would be my advice. For someone that's suffered through it, no.
Oh man.
If you were to be a character in your books, would you get on with your characters?
I get on with them. No. I don't like any of them. It's hard to say because I mean I think a lot of characters are an extension of myself and my own sort of. They're always imperfect characters that have a lot of flaws. So it's kind of like little pieces of me or past versions of me that aren't all there, and they're not very sort of they're not people that you'd really particularly want to hang out with a lot of the time. I never write heroic characters because nobody's heroic. You're only heroic if you're shoved into a corner. So would I get on with them? I might. I don't know. I probably wouldn't, because like I say, they're extensions of the wrong parts of me. That I'm. It's like a talking therapy, really. Except I don't get charged any money.
And have you written anyone you know into them?
Yes, and killed them too.
Awesome. You're the only person that's ever straight out said yes.
Yeah, it's people like ex-bosses that I've known, or ex-wives perhaps. If you piss me off, you're going in one of my books and you die. So be warned.
Awesome. Okay, don't piss off Brian. Right, fine, noted. And do you hide any secret jokes or messages in your books that only a few people would understand?
I don't know if I've consciously done it. I'm sure that I do, but I've not been sort of aware that I'm doing it. I might sort of put in like the odd saying that only gets said within the walls of these house, just to because sometimes my daughter reads some of my stuff. She's reading my short story collection called Sticky Chuck at the moment, and so I might occasionally throw something in there just to give them a bit of a laugh. I'm sure there's been occasions when she's come down and, hey, what about this? Is this about me? Like, no, don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, so occasionally I might just throw things in there just to make people laugh, really.
And would you consider writing any other genres?
I tried writing for children, which was that was a fun experiment. It was going back a few years when my daughter was still quite young, and she wanted to read a book that she could read for her age group that wasn't horror or anything like that. I said, "Oh, okay." So we sat down one day, and I said, "Look, what kind of a story do you need? Because I've never really wrote children's books before." And the list of requirements was quite interesting. It had to be about dogs. Dogs had to live underground, and the dogs had to go on a quest to get out from living underground. And it's like, that's the requirement. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. So I did write a children's book, and it was called No Dog's Land, and it got me in the local paper because um, my daughter was sort of telling the teacher at school, "Oh yeah, my dad's writing this children's book. This is how we should have him in, do a reading." So I ended up going into the school and doing a story writing contest and doing a reading from this dreadful book that I'd written. And sort of on the back of that, I think it got to like, it was the only book I've written that's had a bestseller ribbon on it. And it was under the, what's the name of the chart? Something that's really silly, like children's dog ebooks. And it was like number one. It was like, wow, okay. So I have tried to sort of cross into other genres. And I wrote two books that weren't horror books. One was Final Wish of Maggie Bosworth, and the other one was about it was called The Roland Sink Hour, which was about reality television, like Jeremy Kyle and all that. But they didn't do very well. Nobody bought those. So if I write a horror book, people seem to buy it. And if I write anything else, they don't. So it's like, okay. So, and I generally don't cross out of my comfort zone very often. I am trying to write something now which is a bit more the crime thriller than anything else, but crime thriller with horror stuff in it. So I'll have a go, but I don't think it's gonna get very far. So I have tried, but like I say, I always end up just falling back into my natural habitat, which is scary stuff.
Nothing wrong with that. If you were able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Good question. I would probably say Roald Dahl because he came across as a very sort of he's the most he was the most British guy you could ever meet in your life, in the way he carried himself, in the way he spoke. But I would have just, loved to have sat down with him and just picked his brain about where his ideas come from, because the man was an absolute genius. I mean, to be able to write that many children's books and have children just read them over and over and over again, that's a special kind of genius, I think. So yeah, I would have loved to have met Roald Dahl. Just sat and picked his mind, just trying to see what the hell was going on in there. I'd love to have seen him interviewed here. That would have been an experience.
I'd have loved to have interviewed him. Would have been incredible. Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, he's amazing, and for kids to still be reading his books now is good going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I still have a collection on my shelf, even though I'm way too old for them.
I've still got one, but I've got some of his short stories as well. It's called Tales of the Unexpected, because he did that television show, didn't he, in the 1980s, which scared me to bloody death when I saw it when I was a kid. But you remember things like that, and I've actually got some of the stories on my Kindle, and I still love to read them. It's like he could write children's stories, but he could write scary stuff just as good as anybody else. So he was a multi-talented writer, So what a genius.
Yeah, well, I think his children's books are pretty dark for kids' stories anyway. So
yeah, I think that's why they like them. I think children like to be a little bit scared of stuff because it's like, ooh, it's like going on a roller coaster, isn't it? Why'd you do it? To be scared, but you always laugh when you come off the roller coaster. It's like, it's that was Roald Dahl all over. He was had a very dark streak, but he pitched it just perfectly to where children just love these stories.
yeah. What's been your favourite moment as an author so far?
I wrote a sequel to Dawn of the Spiders called Day of the Spiders, and I had a real fear that it wasn't going to, that Dawn of the Spiders was just a fluke. But when I released that one, it was a much longer book. It was much better, I thought. And that one did just as well as the first one. That was a hell of a moment because it was like, this is not a one-off. Because I've had more failures than I've had successes, but to just get another sort of hit, if you like, was a good moment. Plus, getting a community on the internet and on Facebook and stuff like that, doing things like this. This was like way and above and beyond the Call of Duty. It's like I didn't expect any of this kind of stuff. I thought I'd always be just sat in a corner writing my little stories, but no. And then people invite you for interviews and make you break cover. It's like didn't expect any of that. So doing this kind of thing is a real revelation. It's like it's fantastic. Love it. Love it. Maybe more people will recognize me in the street. I doubt it, but hey.
Well, you never know.
That's true. That's true.
And what's your biggest dream?
Ooh. I'd like to get signed with a publisher. That'd be nice. I like being an indie, but there'd be something about getting paid up front and then letting everybody else do the hard work of editing and making book covers and marketing, which I'm useless at. So it'd be nice to sort of it would just be nice to be able to earn a decent living doing this. It's just it'd be the perfect storm for me, because it'd be like I could buy us a nice house and stuff. That'd be nice. But buy somewhere more comfy for me and my wife to live. It's things like that. So that'd be nice. That'd be nice, but it's not essential. If that never happens, I'll just carry on doing what I'm doing and still having a lot of fun with it. It's just one of those pipe dreams, that you'll wake up one morning and there'll be an email saying, "We love you. Come to us." And, we'll market you. We'll get you out there. You'll be at the top of the bestseller lists every week. It's like, yeah, that'd be nice. But like I say, it's not an essential. It's just this is ambition that I have. Just to get signed with any publisher would be very nice. But any publisher to know who I am. It's like.
Have you got lots of author friends?
I have online, yeah, fair few. It was a weird thing, sort of discovering this community, because so you publish a book or two. I've published 8 now, I think. And you discover there's other people doing the same stuff as you. They're all going through the same struggles, and how do you do this and what do you do that, and you get into this community and people start helping you, which is wonderful. It's like the last book that I've written, it's coming out tomorrow, was edited and proofread by Helen Pryke, who's she's a wonderful. And I've read, there's 2 of her books called The Lost Girls and Right Beside You, which are like, I was. It's not often I get a book where I'm having to force myself to stop reading it because I'm going to end up going through the whole thing. I have to ration it, but with those books, I really had to ration them because they were really, really just drew you in. So to have her, she offered to proofread this new book that I'd written, and it was like, wow, thanks. So things like that, it's to have people sort of reach out to you and offer help. It's like you don't feel like you're quite as much on your own as you used to think. But then I've handed out my skills. I'm quite handy with Photoshop, so I can design a few covers. So I did some covers for Sarah Northwood, who was a writer for a while. She did some pretty good books too. So I helped her out with like book covers and formatting and things till she kind of got the hang of it. You know, she was out there. So finding this community is really nice. It's really nice because most of them are quite nice to you. Some of them are bastards, but they're there's less of those kind of people. You know, I remember getting into an online skirmish with a guy that looked like Phil Mitchell. Wrote these really shitty fantasy books. I'm not going to lie, they were shit. I had a gander through them because if anyone calls me out or calls me a name, I'm reading your books, pal, and I'm going to pull them apart. so occasionally you get into these skirmishes. Like I got someone reviewed, I think it was Dawn of the Spiders or something, and called it all the names under the sun. Said it was disgusting. It was nothing but a cheap porn book with a bit of horror thrown in. It's like, that's a bit harsh. So I researched this guy, and he wrote these weird dinosaur books. And I think I think the reason I do that is because once I've got the measure of someone, whether or not they're any good at writing, then it kind of undermines the opinion that they espoused about something I've written. So if you're writing crap, you got no right to sit there and call my stuff rubbish. Sort your own bloody house out, pal. So, but generally other writers are nice and helpful, and you just get the odd arsehole now and again. So it's life, isn't it?
Yeah. And do you get much feedback from your readers?
Not as much as I'd like. Some of the stuff I've got a book out there called The Impossible Death of Erwin Broster. Hasn't had a single review, but then nobody's bought it. So, but other books have lots of reviews, and you get I get a pretty mixed bag sometimes. This is one of the books I hadn't found my feet properly when I'd written it, so it kind of gets a lot of grief off people. But a lot of people like it as well, so it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think it's great and scary, and they're seeing things out the corner of their eye when they're reading it. And I'm like, yes. And then other people are saying, this is crap. This guy can't write. Don't give up the day job. And it's like, oops, kind of already did. So I get enough feedback. And it's generally good. And I don't know why, but I enjoy reading the negative reviews as much as I do the positive because they give me such a laugh. It's like one woman was deeply offended by it, and that someone should burn this book. It's like, I was like, marvelous. If you're so scared and disgusted by it, then I've created an emotive response in you. So I've done my job. My work here is done. Drop the mic.
What's the most interesting thing you found out when doing research?
The most interesting thing I found out was the leg spans of the giant huntsman spider from New Zealand, which they said if you put this spider on a dinner plate, the ends of its legs will curl around it. That's like, that is enormous. So I end up down these rabbit holes of reading these bits of research, and it's like, wow, there's some scary monsters out there. I don't even need to make anything up. but then you end up like I remember googling something. It was something ridiculous like what would be the sequence of injuries if you were hit by a car? And I was reading this thing. I was going, ugh. It's like, your legs will get broken first, then you might get thrown over the bonnet, and it's like, because I was trying to making sure I sort of got the physics of this thing right, and then I thought, bollocks to it, it's fiction. I can make up any injuries I like. So I don't do that much research really. I just tend to make up as I go along.
And what's your biggest fear, and would you write about it?
My biggest fear, oh, I'm scared of everything. Everything. Spiders, not so much. Moths, I'm okay with. Heights, I will crawl on the floor, crying until you get me back down to sea level again. Daddy long legs, I can't. I'll scream if they come in the room. They fly like that. So it's like, no, can't cope with that. I've even got an electric, you know, those electric fly swatters that you hit things and they go like that. I've got one of them just to battle these horrible behemoths. But oh god, I get scared very, very easily. It's like I'm a big softy really. But spiders don't bother me so much. I can catch them in a glass and sort of put them outside. I don't kill them. I always catch them in a glass. The last encounter I had with a spider, I quite spectacularly wimped out of catching it in a glass because it was the day after I'd had my COVID vaccine, and I had, you get a little bit of side effects, and I had a bit of the chills, and my hands was shaking like that, and didn't last long that, but there was a cellar spider in the corner of the landing, which are the ones with the tiny little bodies and then big spindly legs. And we just sat in the corner of the landing, and my daughter wanted it out of there because it was scary. So I went and got the pint glass, and I was stood there, poising myself to catch it. My hand's going like that. I said to my wife, I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. And my wife, who is very scared of spiders, just went snatched the glass off me and went, "Oh, give it here!" And she would try, boink, caught it, and it was there in the glass. So made me look like a right wimp. I was like, "Yes, well done, good job." Yes.
Taught you well. Yeah.
I'm a coward, really. I really am. I get scared by everything.
What would your wife and your family say your worst habits are?
I could ask if you like. What's my worst habit?
You're going to get a list.
She's right. Yeah, I am a moaner. Yeah, I moan incessantly about nothing. I'm copying for it now.
Yeah.
She says, she's saying, she said, if she ever asks me anything, I go, what? It's not that I can't hear it. It's just that, what? Yeah, it's because she has a time. She struggles getting out of the seat, you see, and things like that. So I have to go and get stuff, and it's a failing on my part that sometimes I get annoyed by it, and it's like, why am I getting annoyed by it? It's not her fault. But you just this human nature thing where you just get annoyed. She's like, oh, I really need this. Oh, for crying out loud! So I just moan, and then I go out, and do whatever, and I come back and say, oh, sorry for being an arse. It's just, yes, I am a quintessential grumpy old fart, and I think I know my daughter calls me that as well. She says, you're such an old moaning old sod. But yeah, Kira's very like me, so it's like, it's scary.
Well, your wife stuck with you for 10 years, so
yeah, and that's, I've got to say, that's the longest I've been married as well. 10 years is the longest I've been married, so she's very, very tolerant of me and my irritable nature. I don't mean anything bad. I just, it's a grumpy old man. Yeah, But yeah, she says we're just as tolerant as each other, with each other, because she's no bloody angel either. Don't con everyone thinking that. So there you go. That's my feelings exposed.
What's your most embarrassing story?
Oh God, how long have you got?
I've got all night.
Oh,
I
right.
imagine there's quite a few.
I'm going to pick one. Yeah. I went on a little pub crawl. This is going back when I was a drinker, which was a long time ago now. But I used to go on like pub crawls on a Saturday, like start at 11 o'clock in the morning when the pub opened, and sort of be drinking nice cold tap water all day. And we'd always go on this sort of pub crawl around town, and we'd end up sort of back where we started, which was a pub called the Millstone. And up the road from Millstone was a kebab shop called Fiestas, and the Waters Green takeaway or fish and chip shop. It was a chippy anyway, which was just up the road. So we'd always end the night by, getting food. But on this particular occasion, it was about 5 o'clock in the evening, and it was the height of summer. And I decided I was hungry then and there and then. So I was going to go out the pub and go to the chippy, get something to eat. So I went out of the pub, and then the fresh air mixed with the tap water that was running through my system, and I was suddenly like weaving and wobbling all over the place. And I went to the chippy, and there was 2 steps to get in it, one big step and one small step, and then the door. Someone must have tied my shoelaces together or something, because I tripped up the steps and fell through the door. And the chippy was full of people. It was absolutely full of people. And I went through the door went bang like that, and I just went onto the floor. So I climbed up, and I ordered chips and gravy with plenty of salt and vinegar. They very kindly served me first because they could see I was a little bit worse for wear. So, and the people inside the shop were laughing so much that they didn't mind. So I took this chips and gravy with a little wooden fork stuck in the top of it like that, and I carried it, and I opened the door, and I put one foot out, and that was it. I went whoosh, straight down the steps. The chips and gravy went up. You get that reflex called the mono reflex where you go whoosh, like that. So the chips and gravy goes up and comes down on my head. So I ended up sat at the bottom of the step with my arse hurting and chips and gravy dripping from my, and I could hear this chorus of laughter coming from the chippy. They were all howling with laughter. I never felt such a plonker in my whole life. Of course, I mean, I've done things like I used to do things like that all the time. There was another one where I'm going to tell one more, but there was another one where we had a nightclub. It was a Yates's. I don't know if you remember Yates's nightclubs. And this particular one had a balcony upstairs. You could go out onto the balcony and overlook the whole street. And you had to go up this flight of stairs to get to the balcony. So me and a few of my friends were on this balcony having a jolly good drinking session of nice alcohol-free shandies, of course. And I got into an argument with one of them. I don't remember to this day what the argument was about, but men are daft like that. You end up sort of having this, you did this, don't you talk to me like that. We were going at each other, and I suddenly got into my head, I'm leaving, I'm going home. sod this. I was like giving it proper poking, and you don't talk to me like that. I know what I'm talking about. You don't know nothing. And I turned and I fell down the stairs, and I went all the way down this huge flight of stairs on my arse to the point where my trouser legs were pulled up to my knees. And I had the biggest wedgie you'd ever seen in your life. And you have to sort of stand up then in front of everyone and go, I meant to do that. All that, you know. Ta-da! So, there's 2 examples.
Oh God, actually crying.
Fabulous.
Who was your first celebrity crush?
Celebrity crush? I don't know if I've ever had one. I've certainly got a celebrity crush on Benedict Cumberbatch these days. I don't know what it is. He's so bloody handsome. It's like, what is all that about?
I know some people have it all, don't they? It's very annoying.
I know. He's good looking. He's a great actor, and I will watch anything he's in. So it's like I think I've sort of saved my celebrity crushes for like now, and I'm 46 years of age, you know. But I think he's brilliant. I just like, and my daughter teases me. She says I fancy him. It's like I'm like, yeah, so.
If you were to have a superhero power, what would you choose?
The power to float upstairs. Um, I think I'd like to have invisibility. I'd like to be, you know, the invisible man, just so I can go and listen in on people's conversations. Because I'm a right nosy git, and you know, I'd just love to sort of sneak up to people and just. I wouldn't do anything nasty or anything like that. I'd just be standing there listening like that, but I'd be invisible. Well, you know, and then just maybe whisper gossip into people's ears, you know, make them think that they're losing their mind, you know. He said this about you. He thinks you're silly, and then just leave. So yeah, I think I'd like invisibility. I wouldn't like flying or anything like that because the minute I took off, I'd be like, put me down. I'd be the worst Superman ever. Or maybe the Hulk. I always thought the Hulk was cool. You know, just get angry and smash stuff. You know, and then go. And then you change back to David Banner, and you go, "It wasn't me. I didn't do anything."
Well, technically, you could get angry and smash stuff anyway. It just wouldn't be as effective as the Hulk.
Yeah, I tend to get a kick in the bollocks from my wife if I do anything like that.
Yeah, probably deservedly so as well.
Yeah. I give them willingly.
From talking to you before and from following you on Facebook, you've had quite a crazy life. Would you ever consider writing some of your stories and releasing them?
Yes, definitely. I'm actually seriously thinking about doing it.
Please do.
The problem is, it'd be like a bloody encyclopedia when I finish. No, I thought about just sort of maybe selecting a few choice moments and just sort of fictional, like, well, not sort of putting them together in sort of short story format, and maybe just throwing it out there and seeing what happens. But yeah, I seem to have a story for every occasion. You know, it's just I grew up in a house with there was 6 of us in this house, so I've got like 3 siblings that are all older than me. So I've got half a ton of stories from growing up in you know in this environment where, and I had shared a room with my brother as well. So, and he was quite, I don't know, accident prone. I think he's forever banging his head on things, and it's like every time he did it, I'd just break down in crazy laughter. I saw him. He was trying to. What were we doing? I threw a ball to him or something, and he went to kick it, and he missed and booted the radiator, and he was hobbling around. Ah! And I sometimes these stories just pop up in my head, these memories, and I just think I should write some of these down because there is a wealth of material in there, um, but not just from my childhood, but even from the crazy time, sort of from my sort of early 20s to when I was diagnosed. There was always something happening, and it's like, it's when you get into a state of near psychosis, you tend to do silly things, and some of them are worth sort of laughing about. So yeah, I'm very much considering doing it, but I just need to sort of work out how I would put it together and in what sort of format. So yeah, it's worth considering because people keep saying to me, you need to write some of these stories down because they're pretty funny, and it's like, yeah, better being there. It's like
Yeah.
I just think about stupid things like when my brother fell down the stairs wearing this stupid mask and we were playing hide and seek, and I was hidden in the bathroom and he was out in the hallway, and he bought this Halloween mask and he's like wearing it and going "Arr, arr, arr," and I just heard him go "Arr, arr, arr," and boom, 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 boom. Sounded like EastEnders had finished. And so there's just tons of ridiculous stories. So yeah, I'm gonna try and sketch something out and see if I can piece it together. So yeah, definitely, it's on the cards. It's gonna
Awesome.
happen.
I will read it. I will buy it. Absolutely. I will buy it now. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what's coming next for you?
Well, I've got the second coming, which is coming out tomorrow. Which is a story about it was inspired by it. Just before lockdown happened, I was getting I got visited by some Jehovah's Witnesses, and not that I subscribe to any of this sort of guff, but I'm always polite to them because they take so much shit off people. It's unbelievable. You can hear them coming because you can hear people yelling at them. You can hear people yelling on the street, and you think there's either a riot going on or there's Jehovah's Witnesses around. So when they knocked on my door, um, I just engaged them in conversation because they're interesting people, and they've got these uh, weird kind of belief systems that I don't quite understand. So I'm always trying to sort of find out more about it. So they gave me this little book. It's in my drawer somewhere, and I read through it, and they were talking about the God coming back to Earth and bringing back all the dead relatives and doing away with all the sinners and all that. And I was thinking, could you imagine if this actually happened? That people would just go along with this? It's like, is that even possible that people actually believe that this is going to happen? So it seeded an idea in my head of what would happen if, the devil and the Messiah came back to Earth, but just in an ordinary northern city. So the story kind of snowballed from there. Um, so that's coming out tomorrow. Um, like I say, Helen Pryke helped me put it together because she proofread it for me, and it took a bloody long time to correct everything because I didn't realize how the bad habits that I'd gotten into. I didn't realize. I was always putting I had, she had, they had, and it's like get rid of the hads. So when I write now, so so that's tomorrow. That's coming out tomorrow, and beyond that, I've written the final Spiders story. I've already written it, so I'm hoping to get that out by Halloween. Um, so that'll be sort of closing the door on that because that's the final one. There's not going to be any more after that. I don't just want to be known for spiders. God damn it, I'm an artist. But after that, I'm trying something new, some sort of crime horror crossovers. So we'll see where it goes from that. And obviously, this new memoir of silly stories. So that's my future. I'm just gonna keep on trucking, as it were.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked that you want to tell us about.
No, I don't think so. But it's always with hindsight, isn't it? Yeah. I can't think of anything else. I think it's been pretty comprehensive, I think.
So do you just want to tell everyone where they can find out more about you and where they can find your books?
Yes, if you go to Facebook and go to @Brian O'Gorman author, you'll find me there espousing my hugely intellectual bollocks to the world. My books are all on Amazon. Dawn of the Spiders, Day of the Spiders, The Water, I Wish Mary Bosworth. I can't name them all, but I'm out there on Amazon, so please check it out. And if you ask me nicely, I might send you a free Kindle edition, but only if I'm in a good mood.
Noted. Well, thank you very much.
No worries.